Alright guys, welcome again to your favorite anime rocks. We are the Positive Service Announcement Team. As always, I am David Thor Burns, one of the two nerds on the couch, not on the couch.
I'm Julie, Jay Bernstein's.
I am Cole, Warring Pug.
I am Kat Thompson.
I'm Beth, also two nerds on a couch. The other nerd not on a couch.
Womp womp.
Alright. And this week we are actually going to be talking about Ouran High School Host Club.
Okay, this is super nitpicky, and it's probably not really a terrible thing, but one of my tiny qualms with the show is that it shows a very innocent portrayal of host clubs. And I've heard a lot of people, a lot of girls on the internet and people that I know who have said, I want to go to Japan and I want to go to a host club. But host clubs aren't like they show in the show. And we don't actually see a lot of anime with host clubs. We see a lot of maid cafes, that's fine. Lots and lots of maid shows, and you can go to a maid cafe with some expectation of what's going to happen. But for a host club, it's a very, very different environment. There's alcohol involved, and the hosts are there to get you to drink. And if you don't know what you're getting into because you've only seen one show with a host club in it, then you could be putting yourself in a potentially, not quite dangerous, but, a potentially unsafe or unwelcome circumstance without even knowing it.
I've been captured by a bunch of boys that are calling themselves a host club.
Again, this is going to be nitpicky. So the anime itself, as the case with so many animes, caught up to its manga. So we only have one season of Ouran. Unfortunately, we never got more. So as a result, the writers of the anime had to, I guess, think on their feet and adapt the ending of our season of Ouran, the anime, differently from what happens in the manga. And with this comes our biggest gripe with that, is that it kind of deviates the characters. Haruhi, spoiler if you haven't watched it, Haruhi kind of breaks character, and if you haven't watched it, Tamaki goes off, has a fiance, is going to get married. Haruhi, out of character, goes running after Tamaki. Not the host club, but just Haruhi to save Tamaki. And that's not something that throughout the entire anime or even the manga at that point, Haruhi even showed that level of feeling towards Tamaki. It was definitely something they hinted that could grow, but they hadn't been together, even as a group, that much to really give that. If the whole host club would have gone to pull Tamaki out of that situation, that would have made more sense than just Haruhi on a single heroine mission.
It really felt like it was very tropish. It's such in this kind of show or any kind of romantic drama, this would be a very distinct trope. And this is a show that parodies those kinds of tropes. So to actually put it in and have it be a serious situation sort of changed the tone of the show, and it didn't feel quite right. It felt kind of out of place.
A bit of derailment there.
Yeah.
Which also leads us into, I believe, a good point that Cole has.
So the premise of the show itself is, as Kat has mentioned, a parody of romantic comedies. It presents, and there I go with the us again. We talked about this off camera last week, but the premise of the show is to make fun of a lot of the things that other shows like itself normally have as part of their formula. Unfortunately, by doing so, the show has no sense of consequence. Now, this is only important if you watch shows with an expectation of postmodernism, where there are consequences to things, where there's darker elements to the show. You don't get that here because this is a very lighthearted show, and that also works in its favor. It's a double-edged sword depending on how you look at it. If you watch this show and you're expecting something more in line with its contemporaries, you will not find it here.
Which sort of goes along with just the whole way the show was marketed. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it was, in a way, misleading. because pretty much when it was marketed and released, it very much comes across as an extremely tropish, stereotypical Cinderella story of poor girl falls in relationships with super rich guys who are like saving her, and it's not that at all, but it is because it's presented that way, and most people, even people who've watched it, wouldn't necessarily identify it as a parody of a rom-com, but it is in a way. So definitely nobody who basically anyone who has not already watched it or plans on watching it will ever know that it actually turns all these tropes on its head when you actually watch it.
Right, so it appeals to people as a reverse harem when it's actually a parody of reverse harems. So one of its major flaws, if you want to call it that, is that people don't understand what it is just by looking at it from the outside. It isn't until you actually have started watching it that you understand that it is this enormous parody, and it's poking fun at reverse harems and its fans.
Right, like it's a surface turnoff, especially for present company excluded. There's a lot of guys out there who immediately say no to rom-coms. And that's the thing about rom-coms, is it's a dual genre. And it's almost never directly 50-50. It's always usually more 60-40, 70-30, the romance and the comedy. And you never know what kind of blend it is until you actually get into it. And this is definitely in the category, I would say 70% comedy, 30% romance.
I'm sorry, Kaoru. I didn't mean to upset you.
There's the whole twincest part that lots of people are going to find as a negative thing. And that's fine that you find it negative, but you probably also don't understand that it's an act. And most of what the guys in the show are doing is completely an act. So...
That was so cute! That Eric Bashford was very good! Super good! Amazingly good!
So now we're definitely going to be talking about all the positives that we love, to where really we had to actually narrow this down. Otherwise, this episode would be about 2 hours long. But the most common thing here about this is this show is just flat out hilarious. You know, the cast of characters blends so well in the comedy that we have just so much. The characters, it is a parody, we've mentioned that, and in that they break the fourth wall. So, as per my boy Deadpool here, you know, the characters know that they are in a parody, and they make note of it, and they take that there. Even the supporting characters seem to know to an extent, because you have the, you know, as we said, it's a reverse harem. We have a character that actually comes in and tells us it's a reverse harem.
It's a reverse harem! This is a reverse harem! There's debauchery here!
So obviously, what really drives this show, since it's not super plot heavy, is going to be this amazing cast of characters. And as we've said multiple times now, it is a reverse harem series, and it does fall into these tropes and has these very typical characters, your glasses character and your sort of little Shoto character, etc., etc. It has the freaking Weasley twins in it. It has these wonderful, wonderful stereotypes, and then these stereotypes are just acts in and of themselves, and there's these deeper characters underneath as a separate layer, and it's so well done to have that, because you can have these very like bombastic, flamboyant characters, and then these subtler characterizations underneath, and just the way that they spin all of these tropes on their heads is just brilliant.
Welcome! When I opened the door, the whole place was decked out like a tropical paradise.
Okay, so it really doesn't matter if you watch it in English or Japanese. It's awesome either way. They do such a great job at getting the characters across. You know, they've got, of course, Honey Senpai, who's like the little one, and they have like the perfect voice, either Japanese or English.
Lucy
Yes.
Christian.
Yes.
So, I mean, and the twins sound so similar between the Japanese and English as well, as far as their tone of voice. I mean, to me, anyways.
Yeah, I actually like
Yeah.
that the twins are played by 2 different people
Yes.
because a lot of shows will have them just voiced by the same person. So when they speak together, it's just like the same voice in echo. But when the Hitachin brothers speak, it's
Yeah.
sort of in harmony. It's
Yeah.
a really cool effect.
And it's a very, it actually helps define the characters as well, that they are twins, but they are separate characters from each other.
And while I may not have liked the Alice in Wonderland
Oh, yeah.
episode, having the twins with their separate voices in English is how I watched it.
I'm afraid leaving here without an audience with the Queen is strictly forbidden.
It's just great. Anyways.
Okay, so if you didn't catch it, we really like these characters. Now, I believe Cole has a little bit something on his take on the...
So this kind of feeds into the negatives, where we were talking about how the show has no postmodern perspective. Just like the characters, they themselves are very relaxed. This is a show that does not carry its drama on long or hard into the overarching plot, and that's actually a good thing. It feeds directly into the show's benefit to the audience, the entertainment value, in that you can get invested in this thing and not feel like you're dragging yourself through another rom-com. It is a show that is almost purely using comedy with a romantic background in place just to feed into that, and it makes fun of all the things that we watch in rom-coms that are formulaic, and I personally love that, and I think everyone else here does too.
It's nice that you can have a romantic comedy where you're not waiting for the couple together to get payoff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Even though you still kind of want them to.
Yes. But then you have to decide which one, and that goes back to, oh, well, I love the character so much.
Then you are starting to play off of what's your favorite trope of the character. What's your favorite trope character? Do you like the prince / king? Do you like the silent? Do you like the mischievous twins? But there's a lot of things there, and there's a lot of messages on different factors of gender, which I believe Julie has a few parts.
Yeah, it's very unique in the fact that it's a show that has so much gender fluidity, and in a way, a chunk of that traces back actually to Haruhi's dad, who is openly bisexual, is a transvestite, a professional transvestite, and nobody judges him for it. And it, in fact, sort of enriches Haruhi as a character, that's sort of part of what sets her up to be such a good host, is that she just doesn't, she doesn't see why it matters whether someone's a boy or a girl or something in between. It just matters who they are and how they treat others.
In my opinion, it's more important for a person to be recognized for who they are rather than for what sex they are.
Which is so important just to get that message across, about just be who you are, which is something they repeat a lot, both in terms of gender fluidity and then even in Honey's episode. Honey's episode is all about just be who you are, don't be ashamed to like what you like, which is of course what we're all about. Yeah. But on top of that, to actually have this representation of characters who are gender fluid, characters who many people in the school now think are gay because Haruhi is supposed to be a guy, and nobody really gives them any flack for it, and it's so refreshing and unusual, especially in other places when we are from America, where we have a bit of a ways to go, but we're fairly accepting of that kind of lifestyle.
We're getting there. We're making steps in the positive direction.
And I have to say this because it is the truth. The reason for Haruhi's dad is because, frankly, he is fabulous.
He is!
In addition to the gender fluidity, just the it goes so against the grain for gender norms. Yeah. With Honey liking really adorable things and Haruhi not being very girly. And I think when you get a lot of rom-coms, and especially the reverse harems, you have such set-in-stone archetypes that this is just so different. Even though it is nothing new, it just blows us out of the water with how different it can be just by changing a few things here and there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the character of Renge just...
Oh my
Okay. So at first she's like a little annoying. And then, oh my god, she's hilarious.
Yeah. Again, and then it ties all into the actual character development. Like, for a parody of a rom-com, this actually probably has more character development and plot, actual plot development than most rom-coms. Like, serious rom-coms. And that's, again, one of the multitude of reasons why. This is just an amazing anime. And if you've looked at it at some point and go, oh my god, it's another reverse harem, if your guy, stop it. Just stop it. This is a funny show. You have two guys right here that sat around, we've watched it before, we watched it again, we laughed our butts off. Seriously.
We cannot emphasize enough, this is a parody of rom-coms. It's almost a genre unto itself as a result, even though it borrows so strongly from what we see in rom-coms. It just makes fun of the material, and it uses them in ways we don't expect.
So ask yourself this. If this were a regular harem show, would you have watched it?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, then you are not giving this series its due credit.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things in it where we kind of feel like people have avoided it because of, they want to seem more masculine by not watching this show.
Well,
but the things that put people off are things that, if it were catered for a male gaze, would be perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
And honestly, there would be much, much more masculinity in this show if they would have just given Mori Senpai more lines and just more screen time in general.
He would have helped.
Just in general. Just in general. But
Sorry.
go ahead. No, by all means.
Another thing this show is very creative about using, while not necessarily doing anything new, is the animation itself. Like, all of the times which is pretty much every episode, when you go into Tamaki's headspace, and, like, there's a dinosaur shooting flames, and he's just going off the deep end, having a nightmare about Haruhi living in a little hovel with one light bulb and doesn't even have 8 cups in the entire house.
でもすいませんカップが足りなくてどうぞ
It's ridiculous and over the top, and it does exactly what it needs to. Also, even some of the animation actually helps break the fourth wall when you have, like, arrow pointing to the vase going, this is gonna be important. And it's something that not many shows do or do this well. And especially because it is such a rom-com, like, every time they're throwing, like, flower petals everywhere and sparkles, and, like, everybody gets, pretty much most of the repeating cast gets some kind of, like, whole splash screen about them looking super gorgeous. And then you have all the ridiculous chibi stuff and them fighting, and it's very wonderfully done.
It's definitely a show that's very creative with its art. And as she mentioned, there's a lot of those imaginary scenes, and they make up, like, 15% of the show?
Tamaki's imagination.
It's not a show you watch for exceptional animation. You watch it for the creative use of the animation.
Yes, for sure.
Definitely. So, obviously, here across the board, I'm pretty sure Ouran definitely has 10 out of 10. If we were to actually rate it, we don't actually rate these, but this is definitely one of those shows, like we said at the beginning, we had to nitpick just to find a few negative marks, just to have something there for that part. But
other than people don't watch it because they don't understand what it is. Like, it's
Yeah.
such a blanket thing.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't like this show, or they make fun of you for liking it, they either had a wrong impression from someone else they knew who had actually watched the show, and most definitely probably have not watched it themselves. I don't think you could actually watch the show and hate it.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
not
really
like it, but just not hate it.
Yeah, I mean, you probably, it'd be the case of someone watching, like, the first episode, maybe first 2 episodes, and going, I'm not sure where this is going, so they just stop watching it. But if you actually watch it through, you just can't not like this anime. So
we actually went out of our way to try and find negative reviews.
Yeah,
and they just didn't exist.
They didn't exist. And now that we've definitely proven without a shadow of a doubt that Ouran High School Host Club is definitely an anime that rocks, next time we're going to talk about a little feudal Japan anime. I believe you know it as Inuyasha.
Believe it. Oh wait, I played that
Sit
part.
boy.
Inuyasha. If anybody could pronounce it
No,
right.
I don't think I've heard of that one. No, I don't know.
I don't know. Is that another long runner? I mean, I don't watch those.
Alright then. And thank you for watching.
Yeah,
Thank
Don't
you.
forget
Bye, guys.
to like, comment, subscribe, all of the funny things. Links down below. Share us, talk about us, love
Sharing is
us,
caring.
and bye bye.